Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Justaposition, the podcast where we explore mental health, vulnerability, and personal life journeys with creators you know and love. So make sure you subscribe to the Justaposition YouTube channel to watch all the videos and stream our episodes wherever you listen to our podcast. New episodes are out every Thursday. And today's guest is one that I had the privilege of meeting at VidCon. We actually did a panel together talking about sustainability in our world today. She's absolutely incredible, has some of the coolest stories and just life experiences, but also social awareness in terms of protecting our world. Please, everyone, welcome Alison. Thank you so much for coming on.
Aloha from the other island.
I know, you have the most beautiful backdrop. Like, I'm sure people ask you all the time, they're like, is that a fake Zoom backdrop? It's so gorgeous. You're located on Big Island, yeah?
Yep, I didn't go green with a green screen. I went green with building a treehouse. So
yes.
Yeah, this is our home sweet treehouse over, on Big Island, and I'm waving at you across the sea.
Yeah, I know.
And so excited to be here from the concrete jungles of Anaheim at VidCon to the jungle of home sweet treehouse. Here we are.
It's so cool. I think we talked for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, like after we already like did the session together, to where like I was like generally familiar with you, but like it was, and I think it was kind of like the same, like we didn't know too much about each other. And then connecting afterwards, we were just like, oh my gosh, like you have such a cool story. You were literally there, like holding your surfboard, having a conversation with me. We're both like, oh my gosh, we're both from Hawaii, like not from Hawaii, but we both live in Hawaii, and like, talking about our mutual passion for like protecting the planet. And it's so cool to have you on. And like, I'm excited to jump into a bunch of questions. One of which is about your treehouse, because that has become like a big topic on TikTok for anyone who's on TikTok. But first I would love to do some rapid fire questions. But before that, just feel free to like introduce yourself. Like, who are you? What is your story in short?
Oh, wow. Well, my name is Alison Teal. I wear many coconut hats. I was honored with the title of the female Indiana Jones by Time magazine, and my life has actually been a wild whirlwind of adventure, investigating legends and mysteries and myths and treasures and fairy tales, because I was raised around the world by explorer parents. So kind of that Dora the Explorer meets Wild Thornberrys, and I am blessed to have been able to finally build a home here, helping my parents when I was just a bitty. So I'm from here, and it's, really become my quest as the quote, I guess, female Indiana Jones, so wild, to protect our greatest treasure on Earth, which I've discovered, is our Earth. So it's a twofold quest in my world, and I love to do it with pink passion and really try to inspire the explorer and kid and everyone.
I love that. I think that's so well put, because the ways in which that you've been able to bring attention to a lot of like the most pressing issues facing our planet, and just, kind of instill the importance of making sure we're keeping our planet safe. You've done it in such innovative, unconventional, and attention-grabbing ways that I think are like so interesting, that I'm really excited to jump into, because like I feel like I've only skimmed the surface of your story, but just the amount of things that you've been able to do is so freaking cool. So I'm really excited to get into that. But I want to first ask for a rapid fire question. How long have you been surfing? Because I recently just barely got into surfing.
Oh my goodness. My whole life, and you should definitely get on board. It's totally amazing, incredibly addicting, and changes your whole life. But I usually use surfing as ways to make waves of change, not just to go out there and surf. So, yeah.
Yes, I love that. So freaking cool. And she's right. Like, anyone out there who hasn't gone surfing, like, it is what that first moment where you're able to stand up and ride a wave, it is like discovering a whole new world. You're just like, oh my gosh. Like for me, I've lived in Hawaii for so long, and I only recently started surfing, and I was so mad at myself. I was like, why did I wait so long? This is so much fun. But yeah, I love it. It's amazing. I also want to ask you, like, what, given kind of your very your lifestyle of, like literally living in a tree house, being very connected to nature, socially conscious, environmentally conscious, all that, like, what does your skincare routine look like?
I knew you were going to ask me this. What am I going to say? I don't do anything. No, for me, my skincare routine looks like getting in the ocean, because I think the ocean's important for your health and wealth and well-being. I think, feeling the sea breeze, I think being in fresh mountain air, I think, I think that's a toughie for me to add to rapid fire because I think there's a time and a place for products, for sure, and for example, I have aloe vera all over, the garden here at Home Sweet Treehouse, but sometimes I can't travel with a piece of aloe vera, so I might need to find a certain skincare product that has, a natural source of aloe vera that I like, or coconut oil. We use lots of coconut oil here that we make from our trees. So I think the answer would be I love to source from just like when you eat, source locally. I think it's nice to source local skincare products or things that, are the seaweeds or are the muds or are the things from as pure to the source as you can get. But I do think I'm a firm believer, and it's probably maybe not the best thing, as I've got surfer girl skin for sure because of years in the sun climbing Mount Everest. And, at 7, my parents took me through the Himalayas, and who knows how much sunscreen was being applied.
Oh, man.
But I know. But I do think that I like to keep it as natural as possible and also inspire the future generations to do so as well. Because as toxic sunscreens and toxic makeups and lotions are some of not only the worst things for our planet, but for like our own health. If they're killing the oceans and the environment, what do you think they're doing to our skins? So I'm really in awe of what you're doing. And I think, I hope everybody hops on board to really dive into that, because it's one of the most important things we're going to face in the future here. With our faces. Face in the
no
future.
Pun intended. I love it. Yeah, no, and
no
thank you for touching on that, because I think there is a large conversation to be had within the cosmetic space around being mindful of the sustainability of products and the impact that ingredients have, either on ourselves or on the earth. And that's something that we had talked about in our panel as well and got to kind of like deep dive into. But no, that's a great response. And yeah, I figured with your lifestyle, it's not, I'll just say it, not a 15-step skincare routine. I figured it's
so funny,
different.
One example I would give is, and I don't know if we'll get into this, and I was the first to go on Naked and Afraid, and it just made me think of this when you were talking. I don't know if anybody's seen Hunger Games, but, here I am for almost a month surviving in the wild. Definitely didn't have skincare routine out there. And then, suddenly we're on the biggest talk shows in the world, like the Ellens and the Oprahs and the Steve Harveys and all these sorts of things. And they're applying all these makeup and the fake eyelashes and the whole thing. And I remember just sitting there being like, wow, is this what people, I know that's an extent that's way more probably than, a normal skincare routine. But when I look back at those shows, I truly think that natural beauty surpasses that amount of anything that you can do to yourself. And I would just encourage people to think about that and to know that there's lots of ways to look at beauty and shine it from the inside.
I love that. I think that's really cool, because I do think, and I won't dwell too long on this, but I was literally having a conversation with a friend, I think last night or the night before, where he was like asking, like, do you have like a makeup artist or stuff like that? And I was talking about like how when I've done different like photo shoots for, say, like news magazines or stuff like that, talking about like skincare, how they have oftentimes supplied like a makeup artist to like full coverage makeup, full concealer, bronzer, like even like contour, all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, but I'm talking about like skincare and like how to take care of your skin and how to like, do all of that. And I can only imagine for you, like the contrast between Naked and Afraid versus like that type of environment. And I think there is a time and place for anyone who like loves makeup as a creative expression and, like loves to show that. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because in a similar way, I remember I've been through those experiences where now I'm just like, please just apply like a little bit of powder, like just to reduce the shine, maybe like a little bit of concealer if I'm low on sleep, like let's keep it like skin focused. Let's keep it like, the natural type beauty. But I do want to actually ask you about, your experience with Naked and Afraid, because I'd say like it's one of the main ways that people, would you say it's one of the main ways that people kind of like recognize you and your own personal brand, or would you say it's more kind of like split?
Well, that's why I was like, oh gosh, should I even mention this? Not that, I was honored to do it. I think it was an incredible experience, but it's definitely been a while, and I feel like I've grown. I've grown
definitely.
and changed. And literally, I had to put it back on like 20 pounds after that thing. But it was a wild experience. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, or coconuts, as I would say. And I think that what I learned from Naked and Afraid, and here we are, for those of you who don't know, it's like you're put for almost a month in one of the harshest environments on earth with a man or a female, man and woman, kind of very Adam and Eve, that you've never met, and you have to survive together. And it's supposed to be, professional survivors. It's not... The way that it was formed to me in the beginning of it all is not a sensationalized Naked thing. It's literally like, what would happen if we were stripped of everything and we had to survive in the wild? And I took on the challenge, and my partner was not necessarily the brightest coconut on the tree, but did our best to exist together. And I really learned that, when you're stripped of everything, human spirit shines through, and you have a lot more in you than you'd think. And when it became such a sensation overnight, it was like the most watched show in the history of Discovery. It was wild. Like I said, suddenly it was like this crazy press tour, and here I am, going from my treehouse all over the world. But with that platform, I felt like came a responsibility, because as I was surviving this show, I would see plastic wash ashore from all over the world. I'd go to try to catch a fish, and I'd catch a plastic bottle. And it had labels from every country, you could imagine. I'm like, well, this is interesting. This isn't, an issue in the country I'm in. This is a global issue. And so instead of, well, did you guys sleep together? I would use that platform and answer the questions in the sense of like, hey, have you heard about our global plastic pandemic that's happening right now? And it's pretty scary. I mean, we've lost, 50% of our reefs in Hawaii since 2011. That's a whole nother discussion, with the toxic sunscreens. But what I feel like is Naked and Afraid kind of gave me that initial platform to really go on and make more waves of change. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. But now I'm happy to be clothed and not so hungry.
Well, I mean, props to you for being able to not only use that opportunity to kind of like take that sensationalized format of a show, because I think for me personally, and I think for most people, I feel the main draw to the show wasn't necessarily purely based out of like a Survivor show, but was kind of like focused on those other elements of just very extreme. And it was very, Hollywoodized, I think, in a way. And I know how press questions and interviews and things like that can go, where it feels like they're just focusing on all the wrong things, the things that you don't want to talk about, the things that aren't going to make an impact. And so props to you for like trying to, reroute that into more productive conversations. And also props to you as well for evolving your own personal voice and brand beyond that show, because I'd say now you're recognized for like so many other things. And I would personally say you're recognized for the sustainability and awareness and, social issue work that you've done, way more so than your appearance on that TV show. And that is, one of the most difficult things when it comes to like the entertainment industry is trying to take yourself out of this very niche specific label and putting yourself into other spaces and, becoming known for that. And the most encouraging thing I think about what you're doing is that it's not about personal gain. It is about starting these important conversations about the planet, about protecting, our future and future generations and animals and plant species, which I think is the most pressing issue of our time, which I talk about a lot in my videos. And I want to ask you, like, what first inspired you to start caring about protecting the planet and raising awareness for, environmental sustainability?
Well, I would say my pretty wild parental units, as I call them. I was literally born into a high whirlwind of adventure at about 2 months old, I'd say. My parents took me up the highest peak in southern Peru and skied me
Wow.
down on their front pack. My mom was the first woman to summit and ski Ausangate, and I think I turned blue going over the pass, and I passed out, and then down at the other side, I came back to, and I was just giggling, and I think that was a great foreshadow to, just loving the unknown and a life of adventure. And we literally lived out of a backpack in a tent. It was very intense. Can you imagine living like your entire life in a 6 foot by 6 foot tent with your parents in just the most wild and exotic places on the face of the earth? But it gave me an understanding and an ability to value our natural world, because if you don't replant a crop, you don't eat. If you don't protect the oceans, you don't fish. And if you don't pass on the myths and mysteries and legends, you don't have a moral base or a place to come from in order to understand how the world works, the sun and the moon and the stars. And so what I started to notice is that, these ways were brilliant and incredible and have been around since the dawn of time, but the storytelling maybe didn't hold as much water nowadays for people to understand. It's like there's a magical eel and then the serpent and then the sunrise. You're supposed to learn from all this. And so I thought, well, how can I create a film series, take up the torch of adventure from my parents, because my dad was a photographer for companies like National Geographic and Patagonia, and that's what fueled our adventures. Well, how can I take up my own torch of adventure and storytelling through media and be able to educate through entertainment and tell stories just like kind of these myths and mysteries and legends, but that can reveal, how to be a better global citizen, but through fun and through excitement and through adventure and through Indiana Jones. And so I dove in full force, literally got my pink surfboard, which is made out of recycled trash, and my camera, and, got on my camel and set off across the world. And I really wanted to focus on inspiring and educating kids. And that's kind of how Naked and Afraid and the Discovery producers found me, because I had already had, my award-winning films, and it was kind of the dawn of social media. And what I realized, after Naked and Afraid, is that maybe I could use the platform to make a difference. So I went back to the Maldives and exposed, Trash Island, and then my film was instrumental in cleaning it up. And also, toxic sunscreens and how it's destroying our reefs in Hawaii, made a film about that. And now, have been able to help ban toxic sunscreens in Hawaii. So using film and media as a way to change environmental laws or inspire, a future generation of kind of explorers and world changers. So that's a big-winded answer to your question. But, I have to say, I'm just like, I kind of get choked up thinking about it, because I literally just got back from the Maldives, where I first, went to do Naked and Afraid. And it's so crazy, Hyram. I'm literally like a coconut girl that came from nada, living out of a backpack and being here in a treehouse. And after all this, I was contacted by the U.S. State Department, and I just got to go back to the Maldives, where I got to teach women in, full, hijabs, burqas, whatever. They all have different elements of that. I don't want to say it inculturally correct, but just to give you a visual, since I know this is podcast, and I got to take them surfing. Women and girls,
Wow.
Some of them had never even swam, and it was amazing. And to clean the beaches, and just to bring kind of this sense of connecting all cultures through surfing and through the ocean, which I've realized, is our greatest treasure on Earth. Without water, nothing survives. So I think you protect what you love, and I just want everybody to fall in love with the ocean and with the Earth. So
Yeah.
I'm not ready to move to Mars yet. I don't.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that's not on the goal list. I mean, that's so cool that you got to do that, and I think honestly so important, because maybe some people view it as like, oh, it's just surfing, it's just like a sport and an activity. It really and I think this goes also with other activities too, like hiking, like camping, backpacking, whatever it may be. Like these these activities where you are forcibly putting yourself in the middle of nature and, being able to just fully experience kinesthetically everything that nature has to provide, the sights and the smells and the feeling of it, and, let alone all the wildlife and plants, like it really helps you gain an immense and very deep appreciation and almost protective nature around, protecting nature. That's why I firmly believe that everyone, and it's so cool that you got to experience this, because I have a firm belief that everyone needs to travel, like at some point in their life. And when I say travel, like travel to environments that are culturally very different, that are completely different, biomes, different nature, that force you to be uncomfortable, traveling to really understand the world, because that was the first thing I personally noticed, like at least for myself. I grew up on a cattle ranch in the middle of Arizona. I hated Arizona and I hated the environment. So I didn't have an appreciation for nature whatsoever. Like I didn't, really, I honestly care too much about protecting the planet, because all I knew was just this, cattle ranch in this very small town. My first travel experiences, I was able to go to Fiji and Tonga in the South Pacific. Wow. And being there and just, being able to swim with sharks and see just the incredible ocean and coral reefs, and simultaneously see, the piles of trash everywhere, just, mounds of it, everywhere, and seeing people interact with it and seeing the trash in the ocean. It was a complete paradigm shift for me, where I realized, oh my gosh, this is serious. And it's so heartbreaking to see it firsthand, where you realize, oh my, it's destroying our planet. We have to protect this. And what a privilege that you were able to grow up, traveling and seeing the world and connecting to nature in that way. And it's why I think, things like surfing and hiking and stuff like that are so important, because it really does put you in that environment and that mindset of being we have to protect this. And good on you for really dedicating your life to that, because it is sometimes it can, I'm sure, feel like, fighting a losing battle in some ways. It's not the most, positive reinforcement of a position to be in when we're in the world we are today, but it's so impactful and empowering. And that's one thing I'm curious about with your work as well, because you're primarily working within raising awareness around, sustainability issues and protecting the planet. That's some heavy stuff where you are constantly aware of and up against, whether it be giant corporations who are, polluting the planet, or, laws that don't, prioritize protecting natural land, or, parks and different things like that. Do you ever feel discouraged, and how do you kind of grapple with the constant fight that is present to protect the planet?
What's interesting is I never came at this from an activist point of view, from an environmentalist point of view.
Okay.
I am just a girl who grew up I didn't know any different. We composted. If you threw away food, you would compost it. If you, I'm trying to think if you have electricity, it comes from the sun. These were normal things to me on an everyday existence. So that's why I don't feel like I've ever come at it from a fighting. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm like, oh, really? What are they doing? What the heck? What are we doing? But I really think that it comes from, for me personally, I think I've witnessed how much I can do as a single person with, virtually no, I guess money would be the easiest way to put it. I don't have big things behind me. How much change I've been able to make. And so I've thought, okay, how can I influence the individual? And so, no, I mean, I haven't gone after the big corporations, so to say, because I feel like, well, if I can have, for example, I paddled, I believe that if you see it, you'll believe it, right? Yep. Which is really, really amazing. With plastic pollution, I can't miss it nowadays. But for example, there was the LA River flooded with plastic after one of the first rains. And my friend called me and she's like, got your pink surfboard? I'm like, yep, I do. She was part of a nonprofit organization, and, she alerted me to it. So I had it on over the, Quest for Alison. So I paddled through it, and I took some video and pictures, and I posted it on my channels. And before I knew it, it had gone so viral that, to my understanding, what I was informed is that it was the reason that people went and voted to ban the plastic bag in California.
Yes.
And so, things like that, where it's like, how can I make a change with my own way of doing it? Maybe you're a lawyer, and that could be your job, right? That you can help change laws. If you're a gardener, maybe you could use better gardening substances that won't be so harmful to the planet. Or perfect example, okay, if you're Hyram, you love skincare, you can make a line that, isn't going to be destroying our skin and our environment. So I think we can all make our individual way of change, and that's how I kind of keep my eye on the prize of the planet, so to say, is that I try to kind of stay in my canoe, in my lane, because I know that's where I can come from. Because if I get too scattered out a million places, that's when I start to get frustrated and be like, oh, nothing's ever gonna change, and nothing's ever. And I think it was interesting that you said the word privilege to have this upbringing, which of course I understand, even though we're surviving off Cliff bars and coconuts half the time.
Well, definitely difficult.
It was difficult. I think it's interesting, that word nowadays, right? Because when I travel, people are like, oh, you just got to go to the Maldives, and I was trudging through Trash Island, not sipping pina coladas on the beach. And so I think that's an interesting word nowadays too, and an interesting way to look at life, because when I was growing up, my number one dream was to go to school and to have homework. I thought it was the most exotic, exciting thing in the world. And so I think the coconuts can always be greener in someone else's life. And it's funny when people hop on my TikTok and, they'll see my treehouse. And once in a while, I've been, pretty lucky not to have, I think when you spread kindness and aloha, hopefully you get that back. But you'll get that random comment that's like, oh, you're rich. And I'm like, okay, this board I sawed by hand as a 3-year-old, helping Papo, with no electricity, no running water. But you can create out of nothing if you have that passion and that drive. And my parents always used to joke that I had a trust fund. And I was like, Mom, we would always laugh about that. And I didn't know what it meant at the time. And they finally explained it to me that, you have to trust that the funds will be there. And that was their big thing is, a play on words with the trust fund, because it really is just a trust that you can kind of live an existence that you want to live. And so my invisible trust fund in the sky is what I kind of try to follow. And I offer, all my films for free all across the social channels, just so people can use them in classrooms and in their own homes. And hopefully, gosh, that was another long-winded answer, but there's a lot there.
No, it's great. I love that you touched on that, because it kind of leads into another thing that I'm curious about, because I think it's so wise to just focus on your efforts and what you can do and what you can contribute, rather than trying to tackle a large problem, because you will always feel, if you're trying to tackle a bigger issue, you'll always feel inadequate. You'll always feel overwhelmed. It's horrific on the mental health. And at the end of the day, it ends up being more negative than positive. And if there's one thing I firmly believe in when it comes to conversations around making the world a better place, positive reinforcement is everything. And that's one thing I love about you as a person and your content, is that you're focused on positive reinforcement. I used to work as a nonprofit consultant. I worked for multiple nonprofits. And one of the things that always drove me crazy is seeing the conversations and narratives that were happening within the social issue space about the earth is dying. These people are dying. How could you not do anything? Instilling guilt into people and always focusing on the negative. And there are literal, clinical psychological studies that show that negative reinforcement will always be less effective than positive reinforcement when it comes to actually making change. And in the content that you've done and in your personality and who you are as a person, you just radiate positivity in a way that I think inspires me and inspires other people to be like, shit, we can make a difference. We can do this. We can protect the planet. We got this. And I think it's so encouraging to see, and something that I want to emulate on my channel as well, which is where, it's all about let's focus on the positive actions that are being made, how we can do even better, how we can improve, and, the inspiration that comes from that. But you're also, in the online space too, which is, The internet is a lot of things. It's primarily a tool that people will use to either express their positive worldview or their negative worldview, and there's a lot out there. So how do you try to stay as positive as possible and radiate that online?
It's interesting you're asking this, and I guess I'll share something that I haven't actually shared anywhere at all. So
wow,
here we go.
Thank you.
But yeah, because I do believe in positivity, and I don't like to create more conflict on things. So I think positivity creates positive change. And, I just did my last TED Talk on the power, the most important thing to pack on any adventure is a smile. And I literally... I believe in it just from learning it growing up. Like, you got a wild cannibal running at you in the jungles of something. And I swear, if you smile and make a joke or something, it can change the entire dynamic of where you are. And I never quite understood why as a kid that it worked, but I did it. And, because my dad, we got to get the shot, right? We got to get the photograph. So it's like, smile, smile. And I was always trained in a sense, I guess, to smile. And it's actually clinically proven that a smile is contagious. And if you smile, that your brain releases, endorphins and all sorts of things that can literally boost your moods. I mean, I read one study that one smile is equivalent to eating 2,000 chocolate bars, like in your brain. That seems bananas, but it's a legit study. So that was kind of wild. So anyway, to answer your question, during the pandemic, I really wanted to inspire youth that were obviously going through a lot. And I launched I'll get to there's always a story and adventure to get somewhere, Hyram. So Ripley's Believe It or Not, it's pretty fun. Ripley's Believe It or Not came to me to write a book, and I got to do Alison's Adventures, which is all about my adventures growing up around the world and my current day ones, and kind of like a Dora the Explorer, Indiana Jones. Oh, actually, I've got it right here.
Hey,
but
there you go.
It's a fun. I know. I was like, I was just read it, but it's just like a really cool picture book, and for kids of all ages that can be fun with adventures from Hawaii to Trash Island in the Maldives. I mean, gosh, look at this trash. Like, I'll get back on subject in a minute, but it's so crazy, like the amounts of trash are in the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
It's just coconuts.
It's just a mess.
But anyway, back on the adventure. So I was really excited to get this book out there to, I'm like, okay, this pandemic's happening. There's a lot of kids homeschooling. Let's get a digital version out there. Let's inspire people to still be able to be global and to travel even though they can't, and to hopefully boost their moods and stay positive. And that is when someone told me, hey, you should get on TikTok. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, just another, here I am doing TED Talks and, getting to speak at Parliament and the World Economic Forum. And I'm like, TikTok? Really? And they're like, but I think, you could have a lot to share with kids. And so I kind of hummed and hawed, and I jumped on the app, and holy taco, within like a week, it was insane. I think I had like 60 million views, and kids all over the world, and families and people, and, oh my gosh, a coconut's green. Oh, wow, you can make milk out of coconuts. Oh, can your magical mama teach us yoga or how to breathe better, or what kind of remedies, have my magical mama is amazing. She's an amazing naturalist, and my explorer papa, and they want to learn about solar power and the ocean, and it was overwhelming. And I'm like, wow, I have a lot, I guess I could share that's so normal to me, but inspirational to others. And then, of course, with anything viral, even when you're putting out the best you can, you're gonna get the random hates. And one day I got a message that told me to go kill myself, and I was like, that's really heavy. And who knows if it was real, who knows? But when I read it, I noticed that it did something to my brain that I'd never experienced before. And if I, as I guess you could call me an adult, as an adult can feel my stomach drop out from under me and actually think like, oh, should I do that? Like, you know, those thoughts go through your mind of like, well, if somebody's telling me to do this, imagine what that's doing to a 9-year-old, to a 12-year-old, to, you know. And then I got a message from this little girl that said, you know, Alison, before I found your channel, I thought I had nothing to live for. My parents are going through a divorce. We're in a pandemic, and I wanted to kill myself. And then I saw that, you know, there's magic, and there's aloha, and there's family, and there's adventures to be had. There's people I can meet. Like, not just my parents are my ohana. Like, my ohana can be nature, can be animals, can be everywhere. I'm paraphrasing, but so between those two experiences, I was like, you know, wow, yes, and yes. I mean, social media has the impact to be able to really hurt or really help. And so, you know, which way do you go with it? And it threw me for quite a while, and I don't know the exact answers. I'm not going to let, you know, haters get me down, but what I have to say is just like really think about what you're doing, because if you were face to face with that person, like would you really say it to them? And also do your research. I think like with TikTok especially, you can see something on your For You because it goes viral, but you don't actually dive into what this person's about, where they came from. It might just be a random video that went viral, and now suddenly it's become what everybody thinks about someone. And so it might not even be true. Usually it isn't. So, you know, do your research and just really try to be kind. And that's why I think, you know, aloha is what I try to lead with and what I've learned growing up here, you know, from my uncles and aunties. And I hope that I can be here as a real life, you know, Indiana Jones or Dora the Explorer. I don't have all the answers, and sometimes I get pretty down too, but I hope I can be an inspiration and a voice if you are feeling down, and kind of we can work on it together. So yes, although I'm pretty always peppy, just know that behind the scenes there's always a real human.
Yeah. And you definitely, I mean, you don't even have to say I hope. You definitely have inspired so many people, and I got goosebumps when you were talking about that, because about what the girl messaged you, because I literally have seen exactly the same thing. Like I've always believed that like when you get your first message online of someone telling you to kill yourself, that's when you know you're really making an impact, because you are emotionally like you're creating a really intense emotional impact on someone. And for every negative, there's always a positive too. And you said it so beautifully, because that's exactly true. Like, the amount of messages I've been able to see of people who, you know, it could just be as simple as they're in a really dark moment and they were able to watch my videos to, you know, to get them through, or whatever it may be. Like, it can have such a positive impact. And, you know, that's the incredible thing, I think, about, you know, the content you create. Hopefully the content I'm able to create is that it does radiate that positivity that I think people were really looking for, specifically within the pandemic, but what people are just looking for in general. And you're absolutely right when it comes to, you know, the impact that words can have, and specifically on TikTok, man. Like, as much as I love TikTok and the ways that it's been able to open up my worldview so much, people can be harsh. Wow. It's an intense platform. And to everyone, it's like, be conscious of the words that you're saying, be very mindful and cognitive about what you are putting out there, because it's not just a private conversation. It's not something that's just, you know, a reflection of what you personally believe. It can literally it can define someone else, whether or not it's true or false. And it can be really impactful. But that's why I've always believed that social media is a tool. You know, it's like, it's neither good nor bad. It's simply a manifestation of, you know, a person's worldview. And that's why I think it is important to just really focus on the positive, like what you've been doing, even though you said like you're a real human. And of course we as real people, like, you know, there's nuance, there's good, there's bad, there's all that kind of stuff, but putting positivity out there, it is so important, because it does help to replicate that and create more of those waves of change, as you like to say, within the people you are watching. And so thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really beautiful, and people definitely need to be aware of it. I recently saw one of your TikToks went super viral, where you were giving a tour of your treehouse, and it went like so viral. I was blown away by it, but I mean, I was personally watching it because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in seeing like what your house is like, because you told me about your treehouse, and I think it's amazing. Like, what is the response that you've seen from that? And then like, I'm more interested in like, what is it like living in a treehouse, like living truly like in that deep of a connection to the land? Like, tell me about it.
Yeah, that was wild. That's like you said, it's such a double-edged sea urchin, right? In the sense that you can make waves of change with social media, you can get environmental laws changed, or you can also really mess up someone's existence. And so just think before you do it. And also what I'd suggest, what somebody said to me, and it really made an impact, is like, if you get 1,000 comments or 10 comments that are great and one that's bad,
yes,
don't focus on the negative, because that's not the majority. So, and that's the way your brain does life as well. It's always going to focus. If there's a million things that are going right, it picks out that kind of one thing that's going wrong. So try not to do that. I'm excited that people have been inspired by the way that we live here. It was crazy. Yeah, I posted something last week. I think it got like 8 million views. I was getting contacted by press from all over the world, and it's pretty wild. But what it comes down to is we worked really, 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 really hard to build something so you can feel like you're living at one with nature. And on my TikTok, it's Home Sweet Treehouse, but to my parents, it's our livelihood and everything. It's a beautiful retreat center here on the beach, and I believe it's the only oceanfront retreat center in the state. I think I could be wrong on that, but that's what I was told. I'm actually going to offer. I wasn't even thinking of plugging this, but it just reminded me. In April, I'm going to offer an opportunity for people to come adventure with me and stay at Home Sweet Treehouse, because that's what we do. We have bungalows and such around the property. It's kind of like getting to go and be in Bali, be in real Hawaii, and we adventure to the volcanoes and through the valleys and learn to surf and get to meet my animal friends and eat incredible food made by Magical Mama. So if you guys want to check that out, I think it's in the link in my bio. You can apply. But it's the reason I'm talking about that is because I really love to share in person, in addition to just the social media, like, look, here we go, in person, to really make a change in people's consciousness, right? Because if we don't have a global shift in consciousness, nothing can really happen. So if you're able to come here and realize that, like, it is fun to stay within nature, and no, you're not going to be killed by some random critter, or it's actually I think it's quite luxurious. But we built it from literally the ground up with handsaws. We were hauling buckets of water from a spring on the hill until my papa raised a grant and brought water and solar power to the entire community here. One of the last, real fishing villages in the world, if not Hawaii. I think there's only like 1 or 2 left. So he's become kind of the elder here of the community, and really valued. And I respect the community space here. I never show the location. I never show anything else, because I believe Hawaii in itself is a place to be revered and respected. And even though I'm from here, I still know that I need to honor and walk lightly on those the places and the people that have come before me. And I do my best. I'm not, always as perfect. I learn as I go, because to me, this is just my home and where I grew up and where I'm from. But it's really special to be able to have incorporated into such an ancient and sacred place. And my parents are literally the ones you should be interviewing. They are totally unbelievable humans, and I feel like I call them my big kids, because they're in their 70s and they're still running around, and my dad's like halfway up a coconut tree all the time. And they really instilled in me a sense that nature is what keeps us alive, and that's what we need to give back to it. I mean, 50% of our oxygen comes from that ocean right out there that I'm looking at. So even if you live inland somewhere and you think, oh, why does plastic matter to me, or why does any of this matter to anyone. If you like living, it's not about what race we are, what politics we are. It's about the fact that if we don't have a planet, none of us will be here. And, you know, I think you're making such incredible impact with what you're doing. I know when I left VidCon, I got back to where I was staying, and my friend, this little 15, I think she's 15-year-old. How old are you now, Leilani? She literally lost her coconuts over the fact that I got to meet you. And she said, he changed my life, and he's inspired me so much. So, so Leilani, I'm really stoked that I get to talk to your hero here. So
thank you, Leilani, really for watching. And I mean, thank you for like everything that you've been doing, because like, you know, I have so much respect for people who are really, you know, like using their time and energy, you know, and committing it towards, you know, bigger purposes, bigger issues and all that. And I know like you talked about how you are, you know, focused on your lane and focused on, you know, like sharing your story. But I think there's such power in that. And even what you were just talking about with, you know, like respecting land, respecting Hawaii, like I really appreciate that too, because, you know, I completely agree with you. And I've talked about this on my channel too, where I'm like, it is such a privilege to be able to be in Hawaii, in this sacred, you know, land where there's so much history and just so much beautiful culture and giving spirit. And, you know, I feel like we, as, you know, people who live here have a responsibility to take action to ensure that we're protecting, you know, where we are, to protect Hawaii, to protect nature. And I feel like that goes for anywhere, like no matter where you're located. But I think I've been able to firsthand really see the importance, especially with, you know, the conversation around coral reefs and you know, nature and all of that, of how important it is that we use our energy to protect, you know, this place that we're able to live. And it's really cool seeing how you've been able to do that, not only from just like a content and awareness perspective, but how you're actually integrating it into your day-to-day life and, you know, providing, you know, power to the community that you're living in, and, you know, focusing on, you know, cultivating the land, all these different things. Like, I think it's really, really cool. And I'm so grateful to be able to like have you in my life. And it was so cool to be able to connect at VidCon. And, you know, there's just some people you meet where you feel like this underlying connection of like, yes, we're on the same wavelength. Yes. We want to make waves of change. Like, and I definitely felt that with you. And so I'm so honored to be able to have you on the podcast. And I really, at some point, would love to come visit you and see the, you know, environment that you're in and go surfing with you or something like that in the future. Or if you ever come to Honolulu, me to do the same for you. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Or get me in a skincare routine. You gotta help a girl out.
Of course.
Oh, yay! Well, yeah, no, super duper honored. I'll keep a hammock over here open for you, and we always are ready. So I'll have coconuts ready, and I got a lot of pink surfboards. So let's have a board meeting and see what else we can do to protect this Absolutely. Pretty cool planet. And I'm excited to see what's next in this wild world. Keep spreading the aloha, everyone.
Definitely.
It's
keep doing what you're doing. And where can people follow you on social media?
Oh, goodness. Alison's Adventures, 1LALISONS. Like, my website actually has all my films plugged in there. I think they're on YouTube as well. But just so everything's free, I want kids and families all over the world to be able to experience them. So I have documentaries from 5 minutes to 40 minutes all across the globe. And then, you know, of course, the Instagrams. And I really just have been loving TikTok lately. And, there's some exciting stuff coming up. So check it out. And I also just posted there, like, my adventure with the girls in the Maldives. And there's lots of fun to dive into. So thank you so much for giving me a voice to give the planet a voice. Of course.
Yeah, no, everyone go watch her documentaries, go watch her TED Talks as well. They're really, really insightful if you're a TED Talk addict like me, and make sure you go follow her. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Justaposition YouTube channel, and we're posting the videos where you can see all of it in case you enjoy videos as opposed to just audio alone. And this has been a presentation of Cadence 13 on Odyssey Studio. New episodes out every Thursday, wherever you stream your podcasts. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Mwah.